All right, welcome to my oral report for my Worldview and Biblical Reasoning class that's taught at LFBI by Pastor Brandon Briscoe, which is ultimately designed to teach and equip us how to understand and defend a logical biblical worldview in today's time, which is a post Christian world. And so the required reading for the class was The Consequences of Ideas by R.C. Sproul. And that the book is a comprehensive survey really of the history of philosophy. Not only they go into different philosophies and philosophers, but it really talks about how the history of philosophies had an impact on the Christian faith as a whole. R.C. Sproul he argues that our ideas have consequences, and that the development of philosophy has had a profound impact on the way that people view the world, and not only the world but also God. Like I said, Sproul examines the idea of many different philosophers in the book as Plato, Aristotle, Kant, Charles Darwin, Sigmund Freud, and he actually discusses how each and every one of their ideas has impacted and influenced the Christian faith. He shows how the Christian church has greatly been impacted by the development of philosophy. Particularly, R.C. Sproul talks about the area of theology and ethics and apologetics. And so, in the book, he emphasizes the importance of the Bible. That's one thing. That's one highlight of the book that I saw. He definitely talked about the Bible being the ultimate authority. Which, when we're looking at worldview, either the world can be the authority or self can be the authority. But here in a biblical worldview, the Bible obviously needs to be the authority of our life. And so, R.C. Sproul he argues that Christians that we can have a solid foundation for our beliefs and our values, which is rooted in the Word of God. Which we would definitely agree with that, and how we can evaluate competing worldviews and ideologies in the light of the teachings of the Bible, so we can make informed decisions about how we need to live our life and how we can tell others they need to live theirs based on the Word of God. And so, R.C. Sproul in the book he actually uses an illustration of a ladder in the time of the Age of Enlightenment to talk about kind of man's view of knowledge and Gnosticism. He argues that Enlightenment saw knowledge as a ladder that could be climbed by human reasoning and logic alone without any greater deity or any divine revelation. And so, this illustration of the ladder definitely spoke to me, and it really highlights the danger uh, of a worldview without the Bible that can exalt human reasoning and Gnosticism above God's authority and wisdom. So, speaking of a some philosophers that we talked about in the book. For example, Aristotle and Plato. They developed complex systems and teachings and observations that definitely lack biblical perspective. That was based on reasoning, and their teachings are very popular today throughout the Western culture, throughout the Western world. But obviously, they were limited in their understanding of the nature of God, which ultimately they were limited in. Uh, our purpose as humans, which is to evangelize and make disciples, because it wasn't founded on the Bible. Another philosopher taught was Sigmund Freud, who ultimately rejected the idea of a God as a whole. He developed systems of thought that were rooted in atheism and secularism. He developed the theory of an unconscious mind, which emphasized the importance of human instincts and desires, which ultimately put self as your God. And it was more of a self view uh, instead of a biblical worldview. And so, also in the field of science, we see Charles Darwin and his theory of evolution. We're ultimately, most of us know who Charles Darwin is today. He challenges the biblical account of Genesis 1 and the creation, which is still sparking up a debate that continues to this day. And so, while many Christians has landed on where they're at in the theory of evolution, others continue to reject it based on their biblical worldview. Not everyone who claims that they have a biblical worldview gets it right. If you look at Rob Bell, his book Love Wins, which was the topic of my argumentative essay, it presents a compare and contrast between kind of worldly ideas and biblical ideas, which ultimately he gets wrong by talking about the nature of God and God's love with the concept of heaven and hell, and even the role of free will with man. And so he ultimately takes it so far that he believes and actually teaches through the book of universalism, which is the study that everyone sooner or later will end up in heaven because God at the end of the day is love. So just because someone says and that they say they stand on a biblical worldview, uh, you might need to do a little bit more research into that, as I was able to do in my argumentative essay. But in closing, a biblical worldview, it provides a comprehensive and coherent understanding of reality that is really rooted in the teachings of the Bible. It affirms the existence of God as creator and sustainer of the universe, and by establishing a biblical worldview, Christians can engage with philosophy and science in a way that is both uh, faithful to our beliefs, but we can also critically evaluate competing worldviews and different scientific theories so that we can make informed decisions about how we can live our life in light of the teachings of the Word of God. Thank you so much.